Greetings from Boston. I hope everyone is doing wonderfully. We have an Australian Open draw, and let me say, it looks like it will be producing some historic tennis. I am so excited to be able to share it with you, to talk about it with you, and to just absorb all of this tennis greatness that is going to be happening. We have Novak Djokovic, the world #1, vying to lift his record 7th trophy at the Australian Open. We have, of course, the maestro, Roger Federer, who is the defending champion, but is also vying to lift his record 7th trophy at the Australian Open. We have Nadal, and we have a host of other new and exciting challengers who could stage some serious, shocking upsets over the next couple of weeks. I want to break it all down for you and give you a soft prediction as to who I think will take the money home in Melbourne this year. So subscribe to the channel, give this video a thumbs up. This is Tennis Talk Daily. Generally speaking, I think Novak Djokovic's path into his 7th Australian Open final looks a little bit cleaner than Roger Federer's on the one hand, as well as Rafael Nadal's on the other hand. Djokovic, as the world #1, sits at the tip-top of this draw, and in that top half with him, there is talent such as Alexander Zverev, Dominic Thiem, Kei Nishikori. In terms of young guns and other people who might give us a few surprises this year, we have Daniil Medvedev, Stan Wawrinka, Čilić, and Cecchinato, all again in the top half of the draw with Djokovic. In the bottom half, on the other hand, it's actually a little more complicated. We have Roger Federer in the bottom half, Rafael Nadal, Marin Čilić, Kevin Anderson, and there's even more potential newcomers who could really surprise us this year and stage some shocking upsets. That would include RBA, Roberto Bautista Agut. That would include Andy Murray. Of course, then the youngster Karen Khachanov, Stefanos Tsitsipas, Basilashvili, Dimitrov, Isner, Berdych, and De Minaur. So that's kind of the view from 30,000 feet. Let's break down what this looks like from the perspective of Novak Djokovic. Truth be told, the first few rounds look like something of a walk in the park for Djokovic. He could have to deal with Denis Shapovalov in the 3rd round, perhaps Daniil Medvedev or Kopel or Goffin in the 4th round. The quarterfinal might get a little more complicated for Djokovic. There he might face Kei Nishikori, and Nishikori, to be sure, is on the rise, is ascendant, and is firing on all cylinders if we're judging by the tennis he displayed at Brisbane against, in fact, Medvedev. The semifinal could get even more interesting for Djokovic. There, it might be either Alexander Zverev or possibly Dominic Thiem. I believe it's more likely to be Thiem. Zverev has struggled in the best-of-5 context, and Thiem, on the other hand, has proven that he can play with some of the world's finest at the Grand Slams, and he proved that last year. I think it's more likely to be Thiem. Thiem has beaten Djokovic in each of their last 2 meetings, both of them on clay, one of them in the best-of-5 context at the 2017 French Open in the quarterfinal. So I think it's more likely to be Thiem. Now, Thiem might have to beat Alexander Zverev in the quarterfinal to get there, but I think it's more likely to be Thiem. And to be honest, I hope it's Thiem because I like Thiem a little better than Zverev. Well, if it's Thiem against Djokovic, it'll be a close match, and if the recent history is any indicator, Thiem could stage a big upset. Assuming the Serbinator can plow through the Austrian, he will probably face either Federer or Nadal or possibly Kevin Anderson in the 2019 Australian Open final. Well, What does the perspective look like from the maestro's point of view? Well, Federer might have something of a problem on his hands with either Tsitsipas or Basilashvili in the fourth round. If he gets through that match, he'll be into the quarterfinals where he could face his longtime rival Marin Čilić, possibly even Karen Khachanov, maybe RBA. Federer has done well against Čilić, who's the likely quarterfinal opponent in recent years, but there's also that nightmare match in the 2014 U.S. Open where Čilić, who went on to win that Grand Slam tournament, just clobbered Federer, and that was something of a traumatic experience. But again, Federer has been doing well against Čilić, so it shouldn't be too much of a barrier to get over. But if he faces Khachanov, there he has very little history, a very limited history. He's won the only match that he's played against Khachanov, but Khachanov has changed. Khachanov is a better player, and I think Federer could have an even bigger problem on his hands if Khachanov is in the quarterfinal as opposed to Čilić. If Federer gets through the quarterfinal, this is where the epic Nadal match could take place, assuming Nadal is also in the semifinals. If Nadal is not there, it could be a rematch against Anderson, a rematch that is of that horrific match at Wimbledon last year. Also, Dimitrov, Isner, Berdych, de Minaur, they're possibilities, but it's looking like it's going to be either Nadal or Anderson in the semifinal, likely against Federer. If Federer can get through the semis, then, of course, it's probably going to be Djokovic on the other side of the court at the final, and that will be an epic match, and I think Federer is primed to redeem himself and to finally slay the ascendant Djokovic this year at the Australian Open. Well, I'm already giving you a hint of what my prediction is. With respect to Nadal, there are contingencies, folks. He has the injuries. Judging from the interviews he's given, Rafa is trying to stay positive and thinks he can do well. But again, there are those persistent injuries. Rafa might just have to do business with the very pugnacious Alex de Minaur in the third round. In the fourth round, it could be Tomas Berdych or possibly Diego Schwartzman. In the quarterfinal for Nadal, he could see Anderson, Isner, or possibly even Dimitrov. And in the semifinal, it will likely be Federer that Nadal is going to have to get around. And Federer, of course, has prevailed over Rafa during their last 5 meetings. We'll just have to see what happens with Rafa. If history is any indicator, he could very well withdraw from the tournament if moving forward means that he could jeopardize his chances to dominate once again during the clay season. So again, Rafa might not even be in the tournament by the fourth round or the quarterfinal. We'll just have to see. Finally, in terms of breaking down this draw, let's look at things from the perspective of some of the young guns. Tsitsipas is going to have to probably deal with Federer in the fourth round. If by some miracle Tsitsipas gets through Federer in the fourth round and lands a spot in the quarterfinal, he'll have to look at Čilić or possibly Khachanov, both of whom are capable of beating the Greek, in my opinion. If, again, by some miracle Tsitsipas is in the semifinal, it's very unclear whether he could do business with Nadal in an effective way. He's lost to Nadal on a couple of occasions, on all the occasions that they've played. But also, Anderson could be there, and I think Tsitsipas has had a little more success with Anderson. With respect to Khachanov, again, he's in the same quarter as Tsitsipas, and we've kind of covered a bit of him. He could see Čilić in the fourth round. In the quarterfinal, he could see Tsitsipas or Federer. So Khachanov has a big problem on his hands in the body of Roger Federer, who might be in the quarterfinal to oppose him. We've already talked about Thiem getting through to the semifinal semifinal with Djokovic. In order to do that, Thiem will probably have to do business with either Marco Cecchinato or Borna Čilić in the fourth round. In the quarterfinal, either Zverev or possibly Wawrinka. It's likely to be a Thiem versus Djokovic semifinal in the top half, and likely to be a Federer versus Nadal, or if Nadal withdraws, Federer versus Anderson in the semifinals in the bottom half. So who will prevail? I think Djokovic will push through, but I believe that in light of the recent performances by Djokovic and by Federer, I think Federer might have an edge here. It really is too soon to tell, folks. We're just going to have to see what Roger looks like on these particular courts in this particular context. But with the recent breakdown and tears in the interview with respect to Peter Carter, Federer's emotions are flowing. So that's actually a really good thing. And he's got Carter in his mind. Now that is a recipe for greatness. And I think it's going to produce some greatness in this potential final against Djokovic. Remember, Djokovic's losses to Zverev and Khachanov late in the year last year do suggest that there are cracks in the Djokovic edifice. Meanwhile, Roger looked very solid at the Hopman Cup. He looked, in fact, very solid, beautiful, gorgeous in Paris before, of course, he lost a very close match to Djokovic. Djokovic took that match by just a whisker, folks. It might as well have been Federer emerging victorious in that particular match, and he probably would have emerged victorious at Paris in the tournament generally. Well, we're going to have to see what happens, but that is my soft prediction. I think Federer lifts his 21st Grand Slam trophy, his 7th Australian Open title, and I think he gets a great start to the 2019 year, and we might even see a Wimbledon win from him. It's, of course, not outside the realm of possibility that Novak will pull through. He is, along with Federer, the king of Melbourne. He's done so well there in the past. So we're just going to have to play it by ear. But in terms of the evidence that I have right now, we're looking at a probable Federer versus Djokovic final. And I think Federer wins by a whisker. Subscribe to the channel. Give me your comments. I hope everyone is doing well. Signing off from Boston. Bye.